go ahead and get started, guys. My name's Dolly Wolf, and it's my great pleasure to provide this wonderful event for you today. If I pat myself on the back, I think it's pretty wonderful. It's one-day immersion in TV, cable, and digital entertainment Wild West. I wish I had a cowboy hat for our keynote. I don't. Next time, I will get one. But I wanted to not only welcome you and thank you for being here today, but I wanted to let you know who the players are who were very instrumental in making today possible. I have Sue Hinken here to my far right, who is the Executive Director of Career Services with the University of Denver. Sue and I have been talking along with her team for about a year now about putting something like this together in partnership with the students, not only at DU, but around Colorado. And I think I have some students here that were coming from Wyoming. Are you here yet? Hey, thank you. Awesome. Thank you, ladies. So, Sue, thank you so much for you and your team for making this possible. Back there. And hi, Mary Michael. And next to Sue is Jana Henthorn. And Jana is the newly appointed president and CEO of the Cable Center, the building that you're in. As of January 1st. As of January 1st. I got excited. And Jana is also my former boss for 9 years. I can say that probably the best boss I ever had for many reasons, but the two that come to mind are her incredible sense of humor. She's truly grace under fire, and she really wanted to make each and every day a really fun, good, productive day. So I'm excited for the Cable Center as they move forward with their new CEO. And as I see somebody walking up there, this is Larry Satkowiak. He's the current president and CEO, and Larry's been in that position for about 10 years, Larry? Yep. And is getting ready to go and do some other fabulous things. So thank you. I wanted to say thank you in particular to the Cable Center, to their leadership team, which is Larry, Diane Chrisman, who's sitting here in front, Jana Henthorn, and Karen Shipley. Thank you. Next to me is Evan Shapiro. He is your keynote this morning. And Evan and I go back a little ways as well. He has been supporting academic initiatives that I've been involved with for about 10 years now. Jana is actually going to make a proper introduction before he starts his keynote. But I just wanted to say that there are some people that hopefully will come into your lives that will make such a significant impact that it just makes you want to be a better person, personally and professionally. That's my experience with Evan Shapiro. If you Google him, you'll find out a lot about his background and his passions, and he's a millennial expert. He's a loving father and family man. He's a philanthropist, and he is a giver. And he's here today from New York City, traveling through the country, and I'm grateful that he's decided to come and speak with you guys today. So Evan is a warrior for good, and he's my friend. So I want to welcome Jana Henthorn so she can welcome Evan Shapiro.
Thank you, Dolly. That's a really well put. Evan's a giver, and I'm very pleased to be able to introduce Evan formally. You don't often get two introductions, do you? Evan's title is Executive Vice President of NBC Universal Digital Enterprises, and you can read about him online. But I'd like to tell you a couple of things from my experience with Evan. He's really been a friend and champion of the Cable Center for many years, and if you'll see out in the Great Hall, there's a big placard up there with a quote from Evan. He's been part of our programs for many years, and as Dolly said, our friend and supporter here. He's also one of our favorite people, not just because he's suave and brilliant and inspiring and, all those things. He just has a wealth of knowledge and hands-on experience, and he loves to share with students like all of you. So let me tell you one of my many Evan stories. We were at the University of Texas at Austin, and he was keynoting again for Cable Mavericks lecture series. And so he's up in front of the students, and this was a big deal for the Cable Center, so I invited our board members. So I was sitting in the front row with 3 board members. They were a septuagenarian, an octogenarian, and what is it when you're in your 90s? Not a genarian, thank you, Evan. And so Evan got started, and he got going, and then he dropped an F-bomb. And I started to sweat. And then he did another one. And I just looked over at our board members, and they were laughing and smiling. It was great. It was great. And so that's one of my many Evan stories. He's a straight shooter. He's the go-to guy for some of the most important people in the industry. He's smart, he's intuitive, and according to his LinkedIn profile, his top skills are entertainment, digital media, social media marketing, television, social media, new media. There's really no one more qualified to be your keynote speaker this morning. Please welcome my good friend, Evan Shapiro. Yeah, just start out.
Just told Jenna, I said the only answer to that introduction is don't go blue. It's always too easy to go blue. So this is a one-day immersion in the television industry. It's meant to give you a pretty wide view of what's going on in our industry right now, the different disciplines that you might participate in as employees and as practitioners over the next however many years your career is lucky enough to go on. And so you're going to hear a lot of expert testimony or discussion today around how to get a job and what's happening in the changing technologies underlying the telecommunications industries today. My role today, or what I chose to tackle, was something a little bit more basic to entering the workplace as someone who's either in their first job or really just starting out their career. I've been lucky enough over the course of my many years. First of all, thank you for having me, and thank you for taking part in this event. Doing so, coming here today, demonstrates something about you, that you're curious, that you're interested, that you're looking for information, that you're not just expecting it to come to you. So that sets you apart, frankly, in my mind, from the people who aren't here. Screw them. You've done something today to make you unique. You came to the Cable Center to learn about the communications industry from a bunch of experts. But this was not something that, naturally occurs in the lives of students or of candidates for an industry. You have to seek it out. And by doing so, you've said something about you. You've created something that's a part of your personal brand, and that's really, that's really what I'm going to talk about. I've been lucky enough to work in a number of different industries. My first job was literally, and I mean that literally, shoveling in stables in South Jersey. But I've worked in nonprofit dance, I've worked in off-Broadway theater, I've worked in television, I've worked in advertising, I've worked in marketing, and I've been lucky over the course of my career to meet people who are enormously successful. I've met people who aren't enormously successful, and I've met people who are enormously successful. What I found from CEOs to college students, from actors to activists, is that they actually have one thing in common that makes them successful. Regardless of the fact that they came from a wide array of backgrounds, there was this one thing that I thought had them rise above, or helped them rise above the chafe in the industry, or amongst others who plateaued in their career. So what I'd like to do today is outline the underlying universal themes I've found in all the most successful people that I've met. Is that okay? Yes. Is that okay? Yes. Okay. So it's interesting. I've said that there's this one unifying thing that I found, and I like to take case studies and look for the unifying factors to predict a trend. And so despite the fact that they come from many different industries or disciplines, most of the successful people I've been lucky enough to know have that one unifying factor, from Steve Burke, who's the CEO of NBC Universal, to Ava DuVernay, who directed Selma, from Amy Poehler to Ted Sarandos, who's the head of programming, chief content officer for Netflix, from Lorne Michaels, who runs basically all of late night on NBC, to Lin-Manuel Miranda, who just got a Genius grant for creating Hamilton on Broadway. One thing that they have in common, the one unifying factor amongst all of them, is that they're unique, that they are singular. The most exceptional and successful people I've ever met were all, without exception, true, unique individuals. Despite many of the obstacles that they faced throughout their career or throughout their lives, they stayed true to who they were. They knew who they were and stayed true to it regardless of what came in front of them, and they relied on their natural, innate talents to achieve their goals. Think about the most successful and powerful people that each of you know. That principal or that teacher, that rock star executive, that athlete, that celebrity. Oftentimes, what we describe about them, that thing that makes them rise above, is that they have it. They have that intangible something, that thing that is uniquely theirs. Being unique is not just a marketing trick. It's a virtue. It's a sellable, valuable, bottleable asset. Originality has a tangible value, especially for employees in competitive environments and industries. Despite this, however, business environments go the other way. They often promote groupthink, faddism and institutional thinking, conventional wisdom, and cliched colloquialisms substitute for actual brainstorming and idea exchanges. Businesses often promote sameness and drain the quirkiness out of individuals in order to get a uniformed marching order, set of marching orders. And online social communities are doing this even more. We like to think about corporations as wanting to put us into cubicles and in quarters and in boxes, but social networks do that often even more. They turn us into drones, part of the digital hive. But it doesn't have to be that way. When the web started, back before all of you were born, or many of you were born, websites were unusual. They were quirky. They were messy. But they were unique. They were singular. None of the code matched. There was very little uniformness. And every personal web page looked like that person. You know what I mean? Now, you go on Facebook, and yeah, you can change your cover photo, and you can change your profile pic. But at the end of the day, the shape of it is all the same. LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. I mean, Instagram recently, a couple of weeks ago, allowed you to do portrait versus square. And that was like a big deal, right? If a church or a college or a company forced you to pour yourself into that rigid a frame on a daily basis, school uniforms, dress codes, ways of behavior. We'd raise placards and we'd march. How dare you? Individuality. This whole country was founded on that. But when a technologist does it, 140 characters. This is the shape of your cover page. That picture is too large for this shape. We put them on the cover of magazines. We put them on late night talk shows. And we give them $1 billion in valuation. Then we collectively and slowly lower our standards to match these new frameworks that have been provided for us for our ease of use. And we set those standards lower enough that the mundane becomes special. Suddenly writing in 140 characters or making films that are 6 seconds in length are brilliant. And now we have followers that we turn around and we sell. Think about the reward system or the currency of current digital social media. Followers, likes, not accomplishments, not goals, but, you know. So we've begun to mistake easy for innovative. Just because something is easy or something is popular, just because a billion people use something, doesn't make it true or right. But too often, things become the norm simply because they are both easy and popular. This type of thinking creates a collective blindness in business and in society. We imagine that things won't change too hard and that the collective wisdom must be correct because it's collective, right? And suddenly we drive everyone together off a cliff. This is how we got to the banking crisis. This is how we got to the mortgage crisis. This is how we got to the Great Recession. This is how automotive industry in the United States went slowly out of business and bankrupt. This is how the music business nearly died. And this is a challenge that's facing the television business right now. These blind spots usually come from an incestuous mind meld of uniform decision-making, the construct of organizations whose sole purpose is the success of that organization, valuation, money, stock price. And these blind spots take the forms of lock-ins, of frozen flashpoints. Jared Lanier, who created the phrase virtual reality, and he wrote a great book called You Are Not a Gadget. He calls these things multiple choice personalities. You walk through life and we blindly, think about how many times you've clicked agree without reading the thing that you're agreeing to in the statements on Apple or Facebook or anything like that. And suddenly you accept all the defaults that the world provides you and you have the shape of everybody else. Does anybody here know what a MIDI is? M-I-D-I? What is it?
Digital interface?
That's exactly right. So it is the musical instrument digital interface, and it is the digital expression of musical notes. Well, it's the digital expression of musical notes, period. It was created by a synthesizer player named Dave Smith, and because he was a keyboard player, he thought of music as down and up, down and up. And, you know, there were aspects of it that allowed for reverberation and changing, but because he was a keyboard player, he didn't think side to side. He didn't think bending of notes. He didn't think about guitar. He didn't think about violin. He didn't think about the saw or the human voice and how things can bend and curve. Yet, because it was first and it was easy, it became popular. And then everyone used it. Someone will fix it eventually. That's how the conventional wisdom. Yes, it's imperfect, but we'll get to it. We'll get around to fixing it. And that's how the groupthink was formed, and then no one ever did. After a while, no one questioned the fact that most composers and musicians, the most creative people on earth, were all using a digital tool that made their music sound worse. Think about those MP3 players that you carry in your pocket. It's convenient, right? But because we're compressing the music down to fit into your pocket, we're losing the edges. We're losing the nuance, which is why vinyl is actually becoming one of the fastest selling components of the music industry right now. You have a return, especially with people your age, going to record stores and collecting vinyl again, specifically because it is imperfect. So because it was first and because it was easy and because it was popular, MIDI became the singular tool to express the musical and digital form. The hive centered around it, and music suffered. It's a perfect example of a lock-in. It's a perfect example of creating a personality by acquiescence. They're digital defaults adopted by our innate collective laziness to a certain extent, and modern groupthink and PowerPoint, things like PowerPoint or Facebook or LinkedIn or emojis. Why are there so few emojis? Why is it a big deal when a new emoji gets created? Someone else dictated a set of conversation tools that we are forced to use, and we say, cool. My experience is this. If you want to stand out, you cannot spend all of your time fitting in. You need to rise above these lock-ins. You need to think twice before you hit accept. You need to go beyond the formats that are put in front of you. I'm as addicted to Twitter as any person on earth, but it does not define me. I am on Facebook constantly, but it is not who I am. Yes, I have a LinkedIn profile, but no one who knows me thinks that is me. How many of you have to make a presentation in the next 6 to 8 months? How many of you will use PowerPoint or Prezi to do that presentation? Okay. People who know me, I am probably one of the biggest users of PowerPoint out there too. I do PowerPoint all the time. At one point, I actually did a rap and PowerPoint at the same time. It's true. But today, I decided to not do a PowerPoint presentation, to make myself feel uncomfortable by standing in front of you and just speaking without relying on clicking through slides. Now, I wish I had a clicker so I could click away from that slide, but I decided to actually write it down and read it to you. How many of you need a resume in the next 6 months? How many of you are using the template that Microsoft provides you for your resume? All right, that's good news. That's good news. So oftentimes, bullet points and gerunds are on every single resume, and they're very difficult to tell apart. And if you don't write in complete sentences, and if you don't take the time to fill that form in to tell me exactly who you are, it's going to be very difficult for me to care as I read that resume. Does it describe you, or does it describe some generic every executive, or every student, or every candidate? How many of you use IM or texts as a default? How many of you, your first approach to interpersonal communication is through electronic medium, as opposed to picking up the phone and having a conversation, or, I know, crazy talk, walking down the hall and knocking on the door and speaking face to face? I know it sounds like I'm an old curmudgeon cliche, but those of you who know me, I use digital media extensively, but not first. First is, can we talk? Can we communicate? PowerPoint, LinkedIn, Facebook, these are MIDIs. These are lock-ins. Definitely use them. They're useful tools, but do not use them exclusively. And if you can find a way to break them, you can stand out. Far too often, corporate culture rewards the derivative, the same. Anyone with any differences from the group feels compelled to change. Corporate culture, uninclusive corporate culture, is another lock-in. Many people, especially women, especially people of color, especially people of sexual differences and proclivities, report editing themselves the higher they get in the food chain in order to fit in. They fall into new middies. They talk like everybody else talks. They sound like everybody else sounds. I have to fit in. And often we'll be coached to do that more. And that's not necessarily the best way for you to get where you want to go. Anyone can learn specific skills, how to edit, how to write a release, how to play office politics. But no one can be taught a talent, a true talent, or a unique point of view. These come to us naturally through our environment, through our genetic pool, through what we learn from the people we know, from those who influence us as we grow up and as we travel through the world. Being yourself is the best way to break out of these lock-ins. It's your greatest talent. And despite what any HR department or college counselor or parent can tell you, you can't teach yourself to be someone that you're not. And just because something comes easy to you doesn't mean that it's not a talent. You can play it adopting corporate lock-ins for a while, and you can probably rise above, and you can probably get promoted doing it. But it doesn't make you happy, and it doesn't make you better at your job. I am not advocating for you to everything and walk in and cutoffs and flip-flops next week and yell at a boss or a counselor or something like that. But I am encouraging you to be yourself every day, to figure out what that means and strive to be the best at that every day. The first step is understanding what your true talents and strengths are. And I think that sounds easy. Go find out what your strengths are. Tell me what your talent is. But it's not. I thought I was the greatest third baseman in the history of South Jersey Little League. I am not playing for the Phillies right now. It's a step-by-step process, but actually it's a process of elimination. Determining what you're not good at is actually as helpful as figuring out what you are, because it slims down and points you in a direction. It's a journey over years, over decades. Some people never find it, but you need to remember that when you find things that give you joy, that's probably a talent. That's probably a strength. And society oftentimes tells us the opposite of that. Second of all, also not easy, you have to find a culture that understands you, appreciates you, and values you for who you are. Not easy. And it starts with being honest. You being honest with yourself and being honest in the interview. This is how I dressed at my job interview for my current job. Now, I'm not advocating that all of you do that, but I needed to know that they were going to be cool with who I was. Be yourself. And if you're punished for being yourself, then probably you're not in the right place. Set clear expectations from day one in the interview. Who you are, what they expect from you. This is not all about you, again, saying F you to the man and defying all rules. This is about understanding what's expected of you and what you can expect. Your relationship with your employer, with your peers, with your company, with your industry is your responsibility. No one's going to take responsibility for that. And it starts with, this is who I am, who are you, what do we expect from each other? Lastly, you have to be brave enough to actually act on ideas that you have. This means taking time to formulate your ideas, to test them out on others, to shape them based on the input that they give you, and then to pursue them even when the challenges seem too great. It means doing this over and over again, learning from failure, which is probably going to be the best way to learn, rebounding from disappointment. It means earning success rather than expecting it to be handed to you. This might sound simple, again, but you'd be surprised at how many truly talented, unique individuals lack the patience to learn the rules of change, the resilience to test out their ideas, and the self-awareness to understand how their personal style affects their success in their environment. You'd be surprised how many smart, talented people tilt at windmills, picking fights when they should be trying to bridge gaps, and missing opportunities to join with others when they'd rather go out on their own. When you know the rules, it's easier to change them or to break them without getting in trouble. The clarity of knowing who you are and knowing the culture around you allows you to know which battles are worth fighting or when to shut up. So here are a couple of lessons that I'm going to pass on before I leave. First of all, work hard. No matter what deficiencies you think you have as a new executive, they're paved over by being there early, working your ass off, and trying to strive through perseverance and collaboration. It's very easy to listen to someone who you know is working their ass off on a day-to-day basis. It's very difficult to listen to someone who comes in at 10 and leaves at 4:30. Know your shit. Before you add something to the conversation, make sure that you're adding something to the conversation. Do your homework. Read the memos that get passed along, not just the 4 or 5 first lines. Read the whole email chain before you respond. Share information and then accept and digest the information that's shared back with you from the people that you're working with. Listen. Ask questions, even the wrong ones. You're never going to be punished for raising your hand and asking a question. And if you are, again, perhaps that culture's not the right one to be in. But when you ask questions, however silly they may seem in your head, you'll get information. And the more information you have, the more likely you are to understand what's going on and, frankly, to understand how to get stuff done. When you have something to say, make sure that you understand how it's going to be received. It's easy to raise your hand in the back of the room and throw a red flag at somebody or a hand grenade into a conversation. But understanding what the implications of what you say will have gives you the opportunity to follow up and turn those remarks that you make in a room into the start of a conversation rather than just a hand grenade, destruction, and walk away. You have to have the courage to speak truth to power. Oftentimes, these crises, these blindnesses in our industry come from when good people don't say anything. That's how mediocrity becomes the highest level of success. And then lastly, you have to think about who you are beyond the job. What is it you want to be known for? Yes, that list of things that Jenna read that I'm good at on LinkedIn. That's great, but that's not how I want to be remembered. That's not who I am. My grandfather dropped out of high school to become an auto mechanic, and he had 7 brothers and sisters. It was the Great Depression. He was a very smart guy, and he became an auto mechanic because he needed to help feed the family. And he became a great auto mechanic. I mean, he could fix anything. And he became so successful at one point that he bought the service station, and it became Jules's Texaco in Northeast Philadelphia. And he was a great guy. He was quiet. I didn't necessarily have long, deep, thoughtful conversations with him, but he always said the right thing. When he spoke, it meant something, and I listened. And obviously he was much older than I am, so we didn't necessarily talk about the philosophical differences of the day, but we went to Phillies games and we had a great time. Years went on, I got married, I moved away, and I stayed in touch with my grandfather, and his gas station remained in Northeast Philly, and then eventually, as these things happen, he passed away. And as the oldest grandchild, I had a child at that point myself, and it was great that my daughter got to meet my grandfather before he passed away. My mom and my aunt came to me and asked me to give the eulogy, which was nice. And I thought, there'd be 30 people there, 35, 40 people there. And I would know everybody. Doesn't mean I didn't work hard on the eulogy, but I thought I'd know everybody, and I could tell some personal stories, and that would be the end of it. We showed up at the funeral home, and there was a line out the door. And the hallway was all filled, and I walked in, and I'm like, well, who are all these people? And they turned out they were all there for my grandfather's service. And I gave the eulogy. It was a good speech. And then afterwards, I just waded into the crowd because I just didn't know who all these people were. And one by one, these strangers, these people I had never met before, came up to me and said, your grandfather gave me a job back when nobody was hiring African Americans. Your grandfather lent me money when he had no expectation that he would ever get it back. Your grandfather gave me a car. He drove me to the hospital. He taught my son how to play, street ball. Over and over and over and over again. Over the course of 60 years, this guy, Jules the auto mechanic, touched the lives of hundreds and hundreds of people in the community in which he lived. And that's how he was remembered. Not as the guy who could fix any car at any time. Not as the guy who took me to Phillies games, but as a real mensch, which is Yiddish for mensch. Look it up. And that was a very important moment in my life. I was at the time 29 years old. I had a brand new baby girl. I was just starting my own business. And it taught me that who you are is more important than what you do. And it taught me that being remembered as a good person is significantly more rewarding than being remembered as a good executive or a great marketer. The things that Dolly said about me before I got up here, that was very nice and very embarrassing. But I'd rather her say that than he does a great PowerPoint presentation, or he knows how to fill out a spreadsheet, which I do. And so everything you've heard about me through those introductions, those were things that I hoped people would say. But by being true to myself, by being true to his self, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Steve Burke, to herself, Ava DuVernay, who started out in PR, by the way, and then became one of the most important directors, not female directors, not African-American directors, but one of the most important directors working today. She took a huge leap. And by the way, people said she was nuts to do it. She had a very successful PR career, changed careers to become a director. These people stay true to themselves, regardless of the environment that they're in. You have to figure out what's important to you besides paycheck. Doesn't mean you go without pay, but you have to understand why you're getting out of bed every day beyond just doing a job. The question is, are you doing a job or are you doing your best? So as you go out there and you make, I'll give you a task, I'll give you an assignment from this point forward. For the next 60 days, make 2 lists. On the left-hand side, write down moments of the day where you don't feel great. I don't mean sick or you have hay fever. I mean moments of the day that make you feel weak, that like, ugh, I have to fill out this thing again, or I have to stand in line at the DMV, or I have to whatever. And on the right side, write down the things that make you feel strong. Moments where you're doing something and suddenly it's 3 hours later and you forgot that the time had passed. Doesn't really matter when it is. And at the end of those 60 days, you'll have things that you'd like to stop doing and things that you'd like to try to do every single day. And that gives you a point on the horizon to look at. Your goal should be making the left side of that chart 25% or less of your life. And the right, you're never going to avoid standing in line at the DMV, although they do make it easier these days. You're never going to avoid paying taxes. You're never going to avoid having a boss. I don't care how high up the food chain, everybody has a boss. So narrow it down to a minority of your day. And on the right side, try to find a way to make that the majority of your day. And spend every day from now on looking for those things. It may mean leaving a culture that's not great for you, because not every employee is made for every company, and not every company is made for every employee. And more, strangely enough, and I've talked to a couple guys in the back there who are starting their own businesses, and a young woman who has a business that she's creating. More and more, that may mean going out on your own, putting your neck on the line, failing. Failure will be the most important learning tool you will ever have. Successes are great, but they don't necessarily teach you anything. Put yourself out there. Ask the hard questions of yourself. Figure out what your innate talents are, what's going to give you joy, and then figure out a way to try to make those things happen for yourself every day, to make every day matter. That's the goal. And you'll hear a lot later today from people who are incredibly smart and have risen very far and had great success in their individual disciplines. And you should definitely take notes, and you should look for paths that might seem cool for you. But also listen for that thing that makes them unique, the thing that gives them joy, the thing that makes them stand out. Probably every one of them will have it. And by the way, every single person in this room has it. Each one of you is an individual. Each one of you is unique. How so? I have no idea. I can barely see you. But you have it. And striving to be the best version of that every day is really the goal that you have at hand. So now I've completely veered off of everything that I've written. So if you can resist these lock-ins, these defaults, the impulse you're going to feel to edit yourself when you're in the room with the big boys and girls, and have the courage of your convictions to speak up when it's your turn and you have something to say, when you can follow that path on a daily basis, you'll find that you're more comfortable, happier, and frankly, here's the great part, better at what you do. So with that, I will say thank you, and I will ask you if you have any questions for me. I can answer things about career path or the business in general or many different other things. I can teach you Yiddish. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Well, I just moved to the city 3 months ago.
Denver?
Yeah.
Okay. When we say the city, usually I think New York, so be more specific.
Fair enough. Can you remark on any of the developments for the media happening within the city? And
well, just kind of what you think about the progress?
It's interesting. I mean, this city is not my hometown, and I'm here for less than 24 hours, so I don't know that much about the community, the media community here. I will tell you, though, that between Comcast and Starz and many other venture firms and things like that, this is a fast-growing community, especially right now. This is. I mean, just riding around town for the last 2 days and remembering the first time I was in Denver, probably 25 years ago. It's a changed city, and the investment here is substantial, and it feels like a tech boom is going on to me. People here would probably know a little bit better, and in fact, the people at the Cable Center probably know better than anyone. But I will say this. Geography is becoming less and less important with regards to the success in the media industry now, because the world is infinitely smaller than it used to be, and you can reach out and influence people on a wide basis. So I think the most important thing now is to figure out where the industry could be 5 years from now. Mark Zuckerberg, when he was talking about the Oculus Rift investment that Facebook made, said that virtual reality is the next great platform. I don't know that I agree with that, but he's clearly been right in the past. So, trying to camp out space on that next generation of platforms, that next generation of usership, is really where you should be focusing your attention right now, because trying to jump on the train that's currently circling in the media industry is usually a great way to get lost in paradigm shifts and theoretical conversations. Look where the habits are going, not where they are today. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for someone that has a lot of big ideas for new mediums within media, but doesn't necessarily have that upfront capital? In fact, has quite a bit of debt from graduating college, but has some really big, bold ideas that no one is realizing, but the technology is there that someone's going to just come out with this stuff in like 5 years if I don't get on top of it. Like, I mean, how do you kick that ball?
Well, there's a couple of different ways. I mean, first of all, be vocal about it. Share those ideas, research them. No, that's a big, big thing. But 3 years ago, I wrote about it was an article called "TV and Intervention" on Huffington Post, and I wrote about how the entire industry is going to move to a much more digital a la carte thing, and I described something which is currently Sling, which came out later, but it didn't exist at the time, and HBO Now didn't exist, and it's the reason I got this job. That article is the reason I got this job, and I wrote it 3 years ago. So planting a flag, doing your research, and if you read that article, it is full of research. It's not just, I think this. There's tons and tons and tons and tons of research to back it up. But if you can know your, prove your, and put it out there, it's a great way to gain attention. And right now, with social media being the way it is, you can gain attention for an idea very quickly. I will say this. Back then, 3.5 years ago, I started writing profusely about this digital evolution and about the millennial generation. And I took some positions which were unpopular. But they were a calculated risk. They were a long con, as my mother would say. She was a con lady. And it was meant to lead to a certain point in time, 24 or 36 months down the line. So I picked a train, I bet on it, I stuck with it, I hammered and hammered and hammered and hammered. My Twitter feed is consistent with that same message and has been every day since. And the millennial stuff, I took a position that they're not the narcissistic, me, self-centered, lackadaisical generation that a lot of people call them. And I stuck with that regardless of the fact that I got a lot for it. And both wound up becoming parts of the conventional wisdom. It took perseverance, it took a lot of hard work, it took a little bit of cojones, and I stuck with it and stuck with it. So those are the best piece of advice that I can give you. One, focus. You have a lot of big ideas. Pick one. The one that you think is best. Because being able to articulate that big idea in a room like this on a moment's notice is really a key to success. And then secondarily, keep plugging away. Adapt when you need to, but stay consistent.
Thank you.
As a woman and or any other kind of minority trying to break into the industry, do you have any suggestions?
Sure.
Obviously, it's a very skewed field, so.
The question is, for a woman or a person of color or other minority breaking into the business, how do you do that? And what's the best way to do that? I am a minority. I'm a Jew, which is not a minority in the media industry. Yeah, I'm a Jewish middle-aged guy, so I have a lot of experience being the minority in the room. Although I do, actually. I teach a class at NYU. It's all underclassmen, so, or I'm sorry, undergraduates. So that's, you know, I'm twice the age of everybody in the room, and actually usually only one of the only white guys in the room as well. So I do understand feeling like you're one of only in the room, but I also understand that I am the majority in the business world that I work in. I sit on the board of an organization called Ghetto Film School, which is a nonprofit organization in the South Bronx that teaches predominantly students of color in the South Bronx and also in Los Angeles university level film. And really the course is meant to less teach film, although it's a really great film course, but to teach ways to infiltrate ghettoed societies. Hollywood is a ghetto. The media industry is a ghetto. It's a ghetto of white middle-aged Jews, but it's still a ghetto. And the best way to break down those barriers are to, A, find your access point. So there are great organizations in our industry, NAMIC, WICT, others, for people of color, for women, for other different affiliations. Use them. Because we use our club very well. It's a handshake society, and I get it. Find where that is for you. Go that path. Find people who have trod that path before you and ask them for advice. Use every advantage that you possibly can. Network like hell. And figure out a way to pry open that door. When you do pry open that door, have something specific to say. It's very easy to say, so tell me about yourself, and it just to trail off. You know, you use those organizations the way that they're intended, which is to create advantages for the people that they serve, and then know when it's your moment to speak, you have something singular to say, something memorable to ask, like you just did. Is that cool? Is that a good answer? One more minute.
If you're willing to share, can you tell us what trend or next progression you see in the next 3 to 5 years?
Sure. I think skinny ties are going to go out. And no, I think we're at a transformative moment here in our industry, and we have been for some time, but that moment is actually spinning tighter and faster. So you have a couple of major trends. The first and foremost is a move to that user-based, or what I like to call viewer-based control over content, meaning I program my own network. This isn't about user-generated content and dropping Mentos and Coca-Cola. This is about I program my channel for myself. But you have three major players in the streaming television content world. You have Hulu, Amazon, and Netflix. And everyone likes to talk about how disruptive they are and how they're changing the media landscape by windowing and blah, blah, blah. But what I think is not being realized is that they're behaving a tremendous amount like the broadcasters did in 1978. You have three major broadcasters, NBC, CBS, ABC, Amazon, Hulu, Netflix, and they're trying to serve all people at the same time, kids and horror and everything in between. It's the Walmart approach to content. I don't think it's the long term. Not to say that any of those three companies are going anywhere. They're not. But those disruptors are set to be disrupted. You cannot claim to have all content and serve all people. Netflix a couple months ago said, we want our content to span the breadth of the human experience. It's an implausible thing to do. And CBS still does it, and they're the only one that's, mass market successful the way that they've been. NBC has a great path towards live entertainment. So the broadcasters are still there, but the level of success is much lower than it was 40 years ago. So I think you're about to see disruption come into disruption. I think we're about to change the paradigm with regards to what online channels actually mean to people. And I think you're going to see history repeat itself with regards to the nichification of content delivery online. So I think that's one major trend. And I think the other major trend is a pure division between advertising and subscription-based services. I think that the world is okay with free, ad-supported, and I think the world is okay with subscription, no ads. But I don't think those things commingle well over time. I think you're going to see a real fork in the road. And I think Hulu's announcement with regards to raising their prices and offering an ad-free subscription model is signal number one. I think Netflix's dollar price increase yesterday is signal number two, because I think it shows a sign that advertising is not in their future and that they're going to remain subscription-based. So I would watch that line, those lines diverge more and more, and I would ask yourself, which side of that equation do I want to be on? I don't think that I don't think that one will survive over the other. I think they will both survive. The question is, for people who are entering the industry, which side of that economy do you really want to spend your time on? There's a lot of money to be made in advertising. There's a lot of money to be made in direct subscription sales. HBO is the most profitable television network on earth. So pick wisely. If you're going to go down the advertising path, realize that a lot of advertising is ceasing to work. It's not that I don't know where to spend it. It's that when I spend it and I reach the audience I want to, meh. So that's a major challenge for the industry. I have absolutely no idea how to fix that. But the person who does. So those would be my answers to that question there. One more question.
Yeah, you say that you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your successes.
Well, I don't make mistakes, but yeah, I guess theoretically. Yes, that is true. I'm also quite a wise ass, apparently.
But what sort of mistakes can you absolutely not afford to make? Like, what kind of mistakes, kill people from getting to the top? Or not getting to the top, but getting anywhere?
Dishonesty. That's the big one. If you're honest and authentic, people will forgive mistakes that you make. Dishonesty, and I don't mean like white lies we tell people to get through the world, because we all do that. Dolly did a great job of telling a whole bunch of white lies about me before I got up here. But it's just kind of intellectual dishonesty, hidden agendas, not being forthright with regards to your motives, trying to convince somebody that you're someone that you're not, selling a product that doesn't do what it's supposed to do. People can forgive a lot of things. And, frankly, as a society, we seem to forgive dishonesty all the time too. But I will tell you, if your peers, your bosses, your customers don't trust you, then they're not going to be there when you need them. So most mistakes are passable and are forgivable, and most mistakes are teachable moments. I probably should have gone with PowerPoint. But it's very hard to recover from, I don't trust that guy. Very hard. Okay, one last one.
Thank you, Mr. Shapiro. Also for the East Coast, New Jersey.
East Coast.
So I, really originally from South America.
I didn't think that sounded like a Jersey accent.
Well, you don't have it here.
Okay, good.
When did you stop picking up shit and throw it to people? So I will throw you some back to you. Who, the name of the person that opened the door for you? And also, when do you think that America will stop copying from others, have its own identity, and really give credit to minds from all over the world that they are pulling here their mind, and America is only pulling the money? When do you think that America is going to...
All right, cultural appropriation is as American as apple pie, baseball, and jazz. So I don't think we're necessarily going to stop adopting the best practices from the cultures of the people who come here. In fact, that's what makes America who we are. So I think that you're not going to see America abandon the idea of appropriating the best parts of the cultures of the people who live here. That said, I think we could applaud it a little bit more than we do, meaning recognize where culture comes from. I worked on a musical a long time ago called Bringing in Noise, Bringing in a Funk, which is about the evolution of tap dancing and black culture, and then its appropriation by white culture. And what we found out during doing the research of that project was that people love tap dancing. It's seen as an American thing. Originally, it was a music of protest of the slaves because their pots and pans and other things and drums were taken away from them. So I think as long as we understand the tapestry that America weaves when it takes the cultures of the people who live here and turn it into a larger thing that is the American experience, as long as we celebrate those moments as opposed to trying to run away from them, I think we'll survive and grow stronger as a culture. I think our diversity is our strength.
And who was the person that opened the door for you?
You know, who was the person who opened? My mother. Her blind faith in me from day one is probably why I had the courage to come up here today without PowerPoint and to do a lot of the things that I do. I have a very healthy ego. I don't know if that's noticeable from there, but that's what's gotten me through. So if it wasn't for her kicking down that door as a single mother in 1979, and working her ass off to put me through college and make sure that I understood that I could succeed regardless of what obstacles came in front of me, there's no way I'd be standing here today. So that would be my choice. Thank you very much.